Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Give Me Lemons. I am joined by Logan Petersiel, my good friend. Logan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat.
Do you maybe want to talk a little bit about yourself for some of the listeners who don't know you?
Sure. My name is Logan. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a childhood cancer survivor. I identify as an artist. I do some visual art. I have a love for music, play the ukulele, guitar, and I also have a strong connection with both my Jewish identity and my non-binary identity.
Well, you told me the story about how posted on social finally that you're Jewish and made that a part of your bio as well. What prevented you from doing it before? Was that a conscious decision you made, or was it subconscious? And then why did you choose to start living more out loud with your religion?
It was interesting for me because it was never something I outwardly did on purpose. So, I don't think I was quiet about it. I have been a Jewish camp kid my whole life. After things started to shift politically, it was important for me to add it to my bio because non-binary had always been in my bio since I came out. And I decided that it was time to add Jew. So my bio right now has my pronouns. It has non-binary human. It has childhood cancer survivor, and below it has Jew. And it's interesting that that wasn't so forward-facing at the time because right when I came out, I had a really wonderful reception by my Jewish community, both the synagogue that my family's a part of and the broader community.
Yeah, it's beautiful because often I see religion being weaponized and used to invalidate people.
The biggest thing I got from my religion, even before I remember, is being surrounded by community. So I've had a lot of people in my life following my story since before I knew who they were. And some days that's hard. Those people know a different version of me than the version I'm showing them right now. In other ways, it's been a really powerful thing for me, where my religion, instead of, letting me walk out the door or not supporting me, has supported me and helped me with connecting with resources and made me an even bigger part of their community and allowed me to be both a teen and young adult role model. I believe, and I would need someone from the synagogue to confirm, which we might get if they see this. I think I was the first person who received a renaming ceremony in our synagogue. I made the decision that because I was changing my name legally, I also wanted to change my Hebrew. My dead name was the same in Hebrew and English. And it was challenging for me because that was a choice that my parents made on purpose and they were very thoughtful about that choice. So it was hard for me to make the decision to change it. My rabbi gave me a book which is full of different rituals and prayers for different moments. And it's been really powerful for me to be able to kind of use it to guide my experience. I made the decision that as part of this service, it was important for me to read this prayer called Twilight People, which talks about how we are all people of the twilight. And in order to be part of the twilight, it is the in-between. And for me, that really exists in the lack of binary identity associated with being non-binary, and also the fluidity of the twilight, where it isn't day and it isn't night, but it can be what it wants to be, and it's unique in that. So this prayer has been really meaningful for me, a new way to connect with my Judaism as well, and have some kind of religious explanation for the things that I'm going through as well.
I love your name. I love the name Logan. And so how did you choose that name for yourself?
I knew I wanted to keep the L in order to kind of keep that connection with the name that my parents had chosen for me. And, despite the fact that it didn't feel right, I did want to keep that kind of connecting piece as well.
Oh, you're making me cry a little bit just because I think about when you're telling that story, I think about being a parent and my son and doing what you think is the right thing and hoping that that's the right thing. And when they get older, you hope that they see why you made that decision.
That's the thing, is it's like, even on decisions that I don't agree with my parents on, I totally can see why they did it.
And how do you think your experience with your gender identity would be different, and exploring your gender identity and realizing that you were trans, non-binary, like how would that be different if you didn't have religion?
It would be very different. I think there's two different pieces of this. So there's the piece of what it means to explore personally, and there's the piece of like, how does your community react to you coming out? When it was more of an internal explanation, yes, I was still partaking in religious moments, but it wasn't as much on the forefront when I was coming into this community and saying, this is who I am, and being supported and being well received. On the other side, if I hadn't had that built-in community, I think I just would have been less affirmed, I think. It's hard to say because I've been surrounded by the synagogue community my whole life and also been, like, at Jewish camp and stuff, so it's very much a part of who I am and a part of my family. I was very lucky that, and I actually think it's part of why I came out. It was important for me to be in a place that was affirming of everybody even before I came out. So I ended up at a camp which was arts focused and also Jewish. It ended up being very queer positive. It was one of the first places that I had engaged with trans people. When I made the decision to come back, they were closed the summer I came out because of COVID. But the year after, when I made the decision to come back, before I had had a legal name change, they were very affirming and very supportive of my chosen name, and that was how I wanted to be referred to. And it became a really safe space for me to kind of explore, because to everyone I was still the same person that I had been, and yet here I was being allowed to explore a part of me that I hadn't been able to before.
How did art and music play a part in like your healing and your experience in life?
I've always been surrounded by music. My dad loves music. Grew up listening to a lot of Bob Dylan. And then we used to he plays the guitar, so we used to play some music together. I had one of those toy saxophones, so we would do like duets. And I think music has been a really important outlet for me to kind of process things and be able to help release things on a more long-term basis as well. And has allowed me the opportunity to connect with lived experiences through lyrics and through kind of what I'm feeling, what the people who are writing it are feeling as well, which is really cool.
Do you have a song that maybe right now or just in general that's like your go-to?
There's so many. I think The View Between Villages by Noah Kahan is such a beautiful song, and it so clearly resembles the feelings that surround the past, the present, and in some ways the future.
I have not heard it, but I'm definitely going to listen to it. And when you did come out as non-binary, well, first of all, how did you know? And then how was that received by your friends, your family, and people in your life?
That's an interesting question, because I think after having cancer as a baby, I always felt different. Being different from my peers and having that separation allowed me the opportunity to kind of understand that like there was this piece of me that I wasn't really able to understand what it was. I came out in grade 10 in 2020, COVID. I came out at home over an email. It was a really pivotal time for me. I'm doing this for me. This is about what I want. This is about what I need. And whatever happens will happen. And I've been so lucky with the reception and with the support I've received from my family, my friends, from everyone, really. I also have been able to kind of re-explore other aspects of my identity. So being able to understand how my queerness intersects with my cancer survivorship and with my Judaism as well has been really valuable, and I've felt very supported by my community.
That's amazing to hear, because as you know, that's not always the case for people who come out. When were you diagnosed with cancer?
There was something abnormal on the last prenatal scan. But technically at 1 day old.
Wow. So you've been a cancer survivor your entire life.
Yep.
There hasn't been a before cancer life for you. So how has that shaped your identity?
It's interesting to think about that, and I think I've done a lot more of, like, trying to figure it out since coming out, but there's this clear trend of me feeling different as early as being, like, in senior kindergarten. I was the cancer kid. I was the kid who was leaving school to go to appointments and then having kids go like, "Where were you? What's going on?" The challenge is that, like, yes, inquisitive minds wanna know, whatever, but it's not like they genuinely care about the fact that I'm going to the hospital. Like, they know I'm a cancer survivor. They already know. So it was a challenging thing for me where I was already different from my peers. Because I was in the hospital, when people learn to walk and do things like that, I had bad balance. I had some mobility-related challenges. I was in occupational and physical therapy at school. They would bring my physical therapist into the gym class to work with me while everyone else was having gym class. And I had occupational therapy also during school. So here I was disappearing for periods of time. And really, it was just to, like, try to bring me up to speed of my peers. But I don't think anyone ever understood that. So I was always different as far back as I can remember. Like, they didn't want to hang out with me at recess. I just, I was having emotional and mental health challenges from an early age as well. So I wasn't someone that people really wanted to be around, as awful as that is. I didn't really have the language for it. And then when I switched schools in grade 7, they had a GSA. And so I was now in a position where we were talking about what does it mean to have attractions for people who are the same sex as you. We didn't really talk about trans people, but it allowed me kind of the framework to be like, okay, maybe this is who I am. And, this was the end of grade 10. This was not that far back. Like, I've been out less than 5 years, I think. It set me free in a way, allowed me to be myself.
Yeah, you know what I think is really interesting is that I know we've only known each other for like a couple years now, but it's weird that you had a life before Logan. This is who you are to me. There's no other person to me. So Logan, can you speak a little bit to why gender identity is significant to the cancer experience?
My biggest thing on a more ongoing basis was going back for scans or different, like, diagnostic procedures for, like, long-term things. My specific healthcare providers knew and were able to support me. All of my paperwork had my dead name on it. So I would go to a clinic and I would give them my health card, which at that point still had my dead name on it, and they would write that my preferred name was Logan, but because it had frankly no legal standing at that point, people who were just checking my bracelet or checking my health card for something didn't always remember. So I was interacting with 7 adults who didn't really know my name or my story. So there was a huge difference between that experience that I talked about a little bit and going for my top surgery last year, where all the paperwork said Logan, my health card said Logan, everything was Logan, and it was like my surgeon knew I was Logan, the anesthetist knew I was Logan, the nurses knew I was Logan. Like, it was just smoother. I still have experiences where people either forget my pronouns or use different pronouns because we haven't really talked about it.
How did it make you feel, though, the difference between the experience of being called your dead name and having a procedure versus your procedure last year and everyone calling you by the appropriate pronouns and name?
I mean, the procedure last year was monumental for me. in a number of ways. And you and I haven't talked about this before, but my top surgery was 2 weeks before my grandmother died. And it was a really tough time for a while. I had been planning to do this thing for me for so long, but it felt like I wasn't really able to support her as much as I would have liked at the end. Like, in terms of the surgery itself, I felt so validated in my identity and in my sense of self. It just made me feel really safe and really validated in my decision, and made me feel like I made the right decision. Because sometimes along this journey, it's hard to know what's the right thing now versus what's the right thing in 5 years.
I'm sorry to hear about your grandmother. My grandmother passed while I was going through treatment, and it was a lot. It was really hard. My grandmother lived in Scotland, and my mom was able to fly and go see her and be there with her because she usually came and stayed with me when I was doing treatment. You know, she was like, I just got to go. And my mother-in-law came and took care of me so my mom could do that. And it's a lot of emotions. Do you have any advice that you would give to parents who have a child with a cancer diagnosis?
I think where my advice comes in is much more of a survivorship and narrative sharing place. There's a big piece, and this doesn't even just go for parents. This goes for friends and community members and everyone. It's important to let people craft their own story and share their own story, and not to have different terminology forced on them or experiences forced on them before they're able to kind of decide how they want to navigate this space. For a while, it also felt like cancer survivor was a term that was picked for me. My parents did a lot of fundraising. Unfortunately, that foundation is in my dead name. It has been very challenging for me to come to a place where I still feel like that is part of my story, because that name is not a name I identify with anymore. And it kind of morphed into me trying to figure out how to tell my story and how to do that. But I think a lot of that changed when I made the decision to change my name, and to be able to, in some ways, take back that narrative and make it my own. It felt like the cancer in relation to my identity was something that was forced on me. And I think the shift that I've had to get to, and the advocacy work I've done, and the peer support work I'm doing now and stuff, is about me finding my own story and my own path within this kind of experience I've had.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because you are so involved in the cancer community. You are a peer chat leader. You talk to people on a weekly basis about cancer and your experience. As this person that you identify with, you still want to be a part of this community, but you want to be a part of it on your own terms.
Frankly, the way things tend to go with people who have cancer as early as I did, either they want nothing to do with the community, or they want lots to do with the community. And you tend to not have too many people straight down the middle. There's also the challenge of the fact that by being a part of the community for so long, you go through a lot of loss. It was important for me, before I made the decision to come back in as an adult, to understand what I was opening myself up to. People are in very different stages of their journeys.
You and I met through YAC, which is Young Adult Cancer Canada. We were both on some chats. At the time, you were not a peer chat leader. Now you are, moving up in the world. So maybe you can talk a little bit supporting that organization and any other organizations.
So within the last couple of years, I had started working again with the Pediatric Oncology Group of Ontario, known as POGO, doing some of their survivor outreach work. I was right at the point where I had just graduated from childhood cancer care and pediatric oncology into adult oncology, and I was really looking for a piece to kind of connect me to more community. And so it was suggested that I look at YAC. A lot of the time within cancer spaces, there's this assumption of shared experiences and shared understandings. So I believe wholeheartedly in shared understanding. And yet, my experience does not relate to a lot of the experiences, or is not very similar to a lot of the experiences of the folks that I interact with. And what I've had to show myself, it's not always about you. If you're going to get into advocacy work and into supporting community work, it's really not about you. It's about creating the necessary experience for the people who are leaning on you. I do some advocacy beyond cancer stuff as well. I tend to do a lot of work working on sharing my story. I also have a story coming out later this year, TBD, with the patient voice, which is very exciting. They do profiles on folks dealing with different illnesses, and they really center it around patient focus versus illness focus. A lot of what I do these days in terms of an advocacy perspective is very focused on the intersectionality between my identities, because I strongly believe in the connection between these different pieces as well.
I'm curious about the choice to put yourself in spaces that could potentially re-traumatize you.
That's a really interesting question. And I remember at the beginning of my journey with YAC, I was talking to one of our staff facilitators, and I was quite nervous about interacting with folks with advanced and metastatic disease. As a childhood cancer survivor, I've known a lot of loss. Frankly, before I remember losing people, I was losing people. And a person who really sticks out in my mind, who we lost recently, the first chat leader I had when I started 1.5 years ago was a man named Jason. The way he welcomed me into the space during my first chat really set the tone for my acceptance within YAC. Around 6 months later, he passed away, and he was a real mentor for me also in my journey of beginning to chat lead. I was really scared to be putting myself in a position where I was opening myself up to heartbreak and to loss. But what I've realized is that the connections and the community are so powerful, and there's so much continued healing and connection beyond that loss and outside of it and coming from it, that it's okay to feel. I went to his wake. I knew nobody there. And I ended up sitting next to someone. They had met him at a different cancer conference. Also, just seeing the impact of this amazing human beyond cancer was really special to me, even though I was in a space where I didn't really know people. There is so much to people, and their influence is so strong even after they pass on, and that's what continues to strengthen me. And I take the advice and the resources and the mentorship I got from him, and I channel that into my work, because hopefully I'll be able to do that for someone else. And in a similar vein, we have folks who show up regularly for a while and then stop showing up. We had someone who was showing up a lot right at the beginning who hasn't shown up in around 6 or more months. And he was not the loudest person in the room. He often wasn't feeling his best. I don't know what happened with him. It's hard to also be in a position where, as an empath, you're putting yourself into situations where you're constantly worrying about people. So whenever I have someone who I see for a while and they stop showing up, I worry. It's a challenging space to be in, but that's what's so powerful about being able to build these connections over the internet, is that we've never met these people in person, but they feel like some of our closest family. But I also, we have had discussions about the fact that the experiences of grief are so challenging, both early in life and later in life.
One of my friends, she and I were on the same timeline with our cancer treatment. When I found out I was in remission, she found out her treatment didn't work. So she did the CAR T-cell therapy. And then yesterday she found out that she's no evidence of disease. I have goosebumps right now. And I just started sobbing when I found out. And then I looked at my partner and I was like, I'm just happy I don't have to say goodbye to another cancer friend, because I lost 2 within 2 weeks last year.
And that's why I do the work that I do, is to build those connections in this community and hopefully be able to pass on some of the things that I've learned from folks and some of the beautiful insights they've given me to someone else.
You know what? When you were talking about like people in schools and stuff, like, where are you? Where are you? And, we talk about cancer muggles all the time being like grief tourists. Sometimes I feel like that. It's like I battle with that in my brain. I'm like, am I doing this out of like genuine care and needing to know? Or am I doing this because like I'm just an asshole?
I think it's different coming from a place of like respect and wanting to know if a person is okay.
When I got diagnosed, I had so many people reach out to me. As it happens, you go public with it. Some people do, some people don't. Everybody reaches out to you and they're like, oh my gosh, tell me everything. What's going on? What is this? When I first got diagnosed, I told people, I was like, oh my gosh, these people from high school, they care about me. They've come back into my life. They're reaching out. I told them my story. They haven't messaged me since. They don't give a fuck about me. They just wanted to be able to tell people and be like, oh my gosh, you remember Chevy from high school? She got cancer. I just want a cool story. That's what it is. It's crazy. So Logan, I want to talk about something that might be a little challenging. Trans rights in the United States do affect Canadian politics as well and Canadian citizens.
The way I have to start this, which is frankly really unfortunate, is that there has also been a second executive order signed in order to restrict federal funding and limit access for gender-affirming care for youth. I believe it was in 2023 where the first couple of states started introducing anti-trans legislation. And I remember talking to people, and the consensus was, we're Canada, it will never happen here. First, it was more and more states over the course of the last year, and then some of the provinces joined in. Alberta has one of these most restrictive anti-trans laws in this country. New Brunswick and Saskatchewan both have laws targeting minors in schools. There isn't as strong of a moral divide between the US and Canada that people imagine. I am a person who, despite not getting medical intervention per se before the age of 18, was receiving gender-affirming therapy and psychosocial support from the time I was 14, I would say. There are people who believe people shouldn't have that right.
You said there's not so much of a moral divide between Canada and the United States, and I would say I agree with that, and I hear it a lot too when people talk about racism. People are like, it's not like the United States, and it 100% is.
The best way as a gender diverse person to be heard and to be understood requires so much composure and thought, and much more so than people in other situations, because the messaging is so important to me. The way that I give it has to be important to me as well. We have politicians in this country who support legislation that restricts care for both trans youth, and it's hard to say what it means for trans adults. So when we see what's happening in the States and we say it'll never happen here, I say look at the fact. But I think there is a lot to be said in the fact that people are targeting kids to make some sort of a point about whether trans people have the right to exist. If you're going to say that you have the right to determine whether or not I can receive gender-affirming healthcare that will save my life, I say no way. And I don't care what else you use, because frankly, my healthcare is a human right, and trans youth are not your political pawn. No more. We need to be aware of what our politicians stand for, no matter what it is. And if you have something that you don't agree with that they stand for, maybe challenge them on it.
What do you want to say to people that are not a part of the LGBTQ2IA plus community, trying to understand how they can be an ally?
Allyship is ongoing work. If you claim to be an ally, you have to put in certain steps, more so than just saying, I support you. Maybe it's driving them to an appointment. Maybe it's understanding more about the politicians that you want to support, or understanding the needs of the people in your community. the biggest thing you can do is educate yourself. I wholeheartedly believe that rights for trans people do not come at a cost for cis people. But whatever happens in the next 4 years will determine how people are viewed and whether people live for longer than those 4 years. You have to understand the impact of your vote. Your vote has power, and if you have someone in your life telling you that this person wants to cause me harm, you really have to take a second look at their policies and say, is this the right thing for me to do?
Well, let's take a breath, because that was heavy, and I appreciate your perspective. You and I chatted about the identity of having cancer and that being a part of our identity, because it's thrown us for a loop, opens up the door and can be a catalyst for exploring other parts of your identity.
I'd be really curious to hear kind of more of your perspective as someone who had an experience with cancer as an adult. What is it like to experience it and be cognizant of that change?
So I got diagnosed when I was 33. You have all these plans for your life, and all of a sudden everything has to stop and everything has to change. And I started to grieve the life that I thought I was going to have. But I actually, this sounds so weird, and it goes against everything I believe. I am okay with when I got diagnosed. When I talk to younger people that have been diagnosed, there's a lot that you're battling with. I don't know how I would have moved forward in life with some of those challenges. I don't think I had the maturity. I don't think I had the mental health I needed and the great happy pills I'm on now. It's so heavy for such a young person to experience. It sucks to be diagnosed at any age. Being diagnosed at 33, I had a home. I had a life partner. I had a child. I had my career. I had all these things that had to be put on hold a little bit. I was able to experience those without cancer being the back of my mind. Now, the next however long I have in my life, cancer is going to be on my mind, but I got to live 33 years without thinking about it. And I know not everyone's afforded that opportunity. To wrap us up, my last question, when life gives you lemons, what's one choice that you can make?
Always be yourself. It's been so important for me at every stage in this journey, whether it's related to cancer or religion or non-binary identity, to continue to do what's right for me and to always be the most authentic version of myself, to always be myself. And I think that's the best thing you can do, is you can take whatever life throws at you and tell your own story. It's just so powerful to be yourself, because nobody else is you and nobody else is in your brain. So be yourself.
Well, Logan, thank you so much for being here and making me cry multiple times. Your story is so powerful. Thank you for being here, and thank you for just being in my life. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and I'm excited to see all you continue to do with this podcast and beyond.
Until next time, stay sour, my friends.